Why do we need to pray? Does God need it in order to be good and gracious toward us? Does God need to be convinced that I am worthy of God's attention? Does God have to be coaxed into being kind? The prophet Jeremiah spoke these words as a statement from God when he wrote, "For surely I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for your welfare and not for harm, to give you a future with hope. Then when you call upon me and come and pray to me, I will hear you. When you search for me, you will find me. If you seek me with all your heart, I will let you find me, says the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes and gather you from all the nations and all the places where I have driven you, says the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from which I sent you into exile." At the time of the writing of the Old Testament book of Jeremiah, the people of God were under an earlier covenant, an old covenant. And that prescribed a way of being, a way of acting and doing for God's people to prove that they were truly God's people. What the Old Testament tells us is that God has always spoken to God's people in a way that they could comprehend and cope with. To the tribes of Israel and Judah, warfare and land battles were what they knew. And so to them, God was the God we see in that Jeremiah text, the one who sent them into a land of exile, but also promised to lead them out of it. Even under that old covenant, there were these glimpses of the grace to come. With Jesus came a new covenant, a new way of interacting with God. To the people of Jesus' day, he came to them as the God who was alive, healing people and setting them free. To the people of the early church, who needed philosophical and theological arguments and understanding, God spoke through Paul. To us today, who are we that God must deal with? We certainly know nothing of peace. We know discord and hatred, and our lives are chaos and uncertainty. "I Must Tell Jesus" is an old gospel hymn dating from 1894. It is of the same vein as "How Can I Keep from Singing, Blessed Assurance, and Leaning on the Everlasting Arms." Hymns of this type are endearing because they are so intensely personal. So back to my original questions. Why do we need to pray? Does God need it in order to be good and gracious toward us? No. Does God need to be convinced that I am worthy of God's attention? No. Does God have to be coaxed into being kind? No. We need to pray for the very reason that this hymn states in its opening lines. "I must tell Jesus all of my trials, for I cannot bear these burdens alone." In times of difficulty, this is the God that speaks most clearly, a God of closeness and care, one who does not abandon us to our pits of despair, one who never leaves us to bear our burdens alone.
I must tell Jesus,
is a kind, compassionate friend. If I but ask him, he will deliver, make all my troubles clear.